Management. Let's find out what the outlook is from an investor point of view. Nischal Maheshwari, CEO, Institutional Equities and Advisory at Centrum Broking, now joins in. Nischal, thoughts on Tech Mahindra? Because here valuations are relatively cheaper than the rest of the pack. And secondly, Wipro, where there is a large buyback support. 12,000 crore means the acceptance ratio for retail investors will be on the higher side. Do these two factors convince you to take a look at names like Tech Mahindra and Wipro?
Thank you, Rima. Thanks for having me on the show. I think a set of disappointing results for both the companies, actually, and a bit more disappointed with Tech Mahindra because the margin compression is quite a bit, actually. And Wipro, obviously, I think for several quarters has now been sort of a flattish top line growth. So I'm saying outlook still continues to remain pretty weak. And if we are looking at a sort of a recession hitting the US in the third quarter or the fourth, then obviously I think the outlook for the whole IT industry is not very strong. So I would go and stick with the top guys in the industry, TCS and NP, and then only possibly HCL Tech. These are our top three picks. So I think for the moment, avoid Tech Mahindra and Wipro.
All right. Hi, Nischal. What about ACC? You know, those numbers, they were a bit of a miss, but I think ACC now the street wants to look more into the balance sheet. You know, there's constant, besides the profit and loss account, we're looking for other factors as well. How would you approach the stock valuation-wise? $90 per ton, but numbers are still far from impressive.
So I think in the last 2-3 quarters, ACC, sometimes it's the margin, sometimes it's so one thing gets right, the other things falls, basically. This time the volumes have been good, 10% kind of volume growth, basically. I think that is better than the street expectation. Our expectation also was something like 6-7%. So I think the volumes are good, but then the margins are lower, basically, because of the cost. The realizations are lower, basically. So that is where, so I'm saying they are still getting their act together. So I think, yes, valuation is interesting at $90. But I think the company needs to get its act together, basically, with the new management in place. But yes, I would recommend basically at these prices to accumulate.
Accumulate at these levels. That's the advice coming in. Nischal, any thoughts on, I don't know if you have coverage on PI Industries with the acquisitions which they've made. Do you track it?
Yes. Morning, Prashant. We track it. We have been very positive on the company throughout, actually, for like almost 5 years now. And we continue to see a very, very positive outlook for the company. I think this is has been long expected. If you remember, they raised this 2,000 crores. I think almost a year back, the company was on the lookout. I think in between they were trying to acquire InSwift Labs, which didn't go through. But I think this deal really puts them into, besides the chemicals now in the pharma sector also, I think on the CRAM side of the business. This is what they have been guiding for some time. So I think this is a pretty positive step, basically.
Okay, all right. Nischal, not sure whether you had a chance to look at this Raymond Godrej Consumer deal. You know, I was reading a couple of reports, and for Raymond, it's a good deal because they're getting money. So how much of that is in the price? I'm not sure. The stock is up 40% in 1 month. For Godrej Consumer, though, Jefferies note suggests they're still wondering why this sort of an acquisition. And in the past, some of these acquisitions haven't worked out very, very well. Though valuation-wise, they say it's pretty okay. What's your view? Godrej Consumer, do you view it negatively or do you say par for the course?
I think par for the course, basically, because Godrej obviously has a much larger distribution network. And I think the brands are good, basically, all of them. I think they are very, very niche brands, whether it is KS or the Park Avenue brands, basically. I think what it requires is a much larger distribution. And I think Godrej has that muscle. So definitely, I believe, basically, this is a good acquisition by Godrej. And they would be able to scale this business up.
You're not worried about the low gross margins or the fact that it's expensive?
So it all depends upon basically the kind of volumes you are able to generate. So obviously, if your top line goes up maybe 2-3 times from here in the next 5 years, all these margins will be much better, basically, as you know, basically, because the cost of producing all these goods are not very high. So leverage is going to pull in basically in this kind of a company. And I believe Godrej is a very, very efficient company. They will definitely do justice to this.
The gross margins anyway for the acquired companies 50%. So the gross margins are pretty healthy. It's just about converting it into operating margins. Nischal, Axis Bank, how did you like the numbers? And now that we've got a picture from all the large banking numbers except Kotak Mahindra Bank, how would you rate it in order of preference?
So I think all the banks have done pretty well, basically, which was expected in the last. This is I think possibly the last quarter where I think they have been able to hold on to their NIMs, because I think from this quarter onwards, as we see, basically the cost of deposits have started going up. The positive side is basically all these banks are pretty well capitalized. There is no credit cost on the foreseeable future. So I think for the next 1 or 2 quarters, this is going to be a really good time for the banking sector. Yes, maybe the top line, the credit growth may not be as strong as what we've seen last year. But definitely, I think a good time for the banks. Our preference still remains to be ICICI, Axis, and HDFC in that order.
All right, Nischal, we'll take a quick commercial break here. Stay with us. We are back. There's about 13 minutes to go for the pre-open session to kick off. Stay with us.